Alright everyone, it is officially that time of the year. For episode number 13 of the Road to Success series, we are looking at the most prestigious university out there, basically the one that this channel is built upon. Today we are going to tackle Harvard University, and I've not only had the pleasure of studying and doing some cutting-edge research there, but my time that I spent at Harvard was like the foundational and most learning experience that I had throughout my career. I use all of those things till this day. And it is almost every student's dream to study at Harvard. So in this video, both for prospective undergrad as well as graduate students, we are going to look at the eligibility requirements, the scholarship that Harvard offers, and also take a deep dive into a student profile of someone who actually got into Harvard University. So let's get started. So founded in 1636, Harvard is one of the oldest institutions in the US, and needless to say, it is also one of the most prestigious in the world. Every student wants to study here, and it has rightfully earned its spot as one among the 8 Ivy Leagues in the world. Now, the acceptance rate for you to actually get into Harvard lies anywhere between 2 to 3%, which makes it very, very competitive. This year, Harvard is ranked number 3, with Princeton and MIT taking the first and second spots. Now, looking at the total number of students that actually applied, last fall, there were 47,000 applicants, of which just over 1,000 students actually admitted and said yes, that they actually wanted to go to Harvard. So looking at the international outreach, about 25% of students on campus are actually international students, which means that Harvard definitely plays a focus and an active effort in making sure that they have a very diverse population of students that study there. So starting out with my high school students who are applying for an undergraduate degree, you guys will be applying through the Common App, which is your basic platform that you're using to apply to almost every single college at this point. The application fee is $85, which can be waived if you are in the need to. The documents that they require, although it's a pretty big list. Now, Harvard is one of the few colleges that I've seen that asks for a school report, a mid-year report, and a final report. If you are in class 12, your final report will come after you give your board exam, so it's later, much later, after your application is actually submitted. Now, other than this, they have the counselor recommendation, 2 teacher recommendations, with 1 being optional, and 2 other LORs, which are both optional. Other than that, the standardized test policy is test optional and it was never required. Coming to the other LORs, this is something that I found interesting. Now, although both are optional, Harvard says that you can actually have like this list of people that can actually write a recommendation for you. So let's say that you are an art student or are into sports, you can have a coach write a letter of recommendation. If you've done part-time work, you can even have your employer write on your behalf, a family member that speaks to your characters and your personality, and have that personal touch that can add a lot of value in your application to let the admission officer actually understand what kind of a person you are, what character traits, what personality you actually carry. So what does Harvard actually look for in a student that is applying to their college? Now, looking at the common data set from last year, we see that a lot of the academic-based activities are considered. The only thing that's not considered is your class rank. So even if you add like not applicable or your school doesn't give out a class rank, it doesn't matter because Harvard doesn't use that information anyway. The other things that they look into are interviews, extracurricular activities, your essays, the fact that you are a first-generation student, which means maybe you're the first one to actually go to college, and all of these things. Something that I found interesting was the fact that all of these list of things that they've mentioned are only considered, and Harvard specifically doesn't say that any of these are very important or important, which means that their main focus when they're trying to look through an application or a student profile is to see a well-rounded student, someone who's eager to learn, someone who has a positive and driven attitude and would want to make a difference in their community for whichever major that they're coming to study at Harvard. And this is probably why Harvard, being as fancy as it is, doesn't call majors or streams, and they actually name these things as concentrations. And some popular concentrations that Harvard is known for is economics, applied math, and computer science degrees. So if we were to take a deep dive into what Harvard considers if you were to give your SAT or your ACT exam, we are looking at SAT scores of somewhere above 700 in each of the English and math sections. So you are looking at, anything above 1450 or even 1500 as an SAT score puts you in a very good spot. and a very competitive spot to be accepted into Harvard. Now, as far as your GPA is concerned, most of the students, 75%, had a GPA of 4, which means anything above 90% gives you, a very good chance of actually getting admitted. All right, so at this point, now all of these numbers and stats sound very interesting and very good on paper, but I think that it can be really confusing without an example. So at this point, I want to share an actual profile of a student that I found online who got into Harvard on a full ride scholarship. Now, this student did apply early, and we're going to look at each aspect of their application. So starting out with the grades themselves, if you take a look at, ninth, we have a 90%, 95, 88, and then a 95 predicted for class 12. Now, as you can see, there is a slight dip in class 11, but that did not, stop the student from actually getting admitted. Now, on the other hand, just for comparison, I've put a very generic average profile because students always ask me, are these grades good enough for a college such as Harvard or a top tier college? And this, in my opinion, on the right side, I would say is what an average profile looks like. Again, this doesn't mean that just because you have these grades or these stats, it's impossible for you. I'm just saying that it's a gauge and a reference point to see where you can improve. Now, something that I think helped the student stand out was the fact that he took 3 different AP exams. We have macroeconomics, psychology, and computer science A, all in which he scored either a 4 or a 5. Now, for those of you guys that are new to the concept of AP exams, it's called the Advanced Placement Exam that you can take every year. You have to sign up for it separately like you do for the SAT, self-study, and this is available in all countries. So you register for the exam, study for the exam, and give the exam. It's scored out of a 5, so anywhere where you can get a 4 or 5 is very impressive. I've seen students that write 5, 10, 15, even 20 AP exams. I think there are 33 different types that you can write. So AP exams really show that you are in good academic standing. Now, coming to the SAT score, the student had a 1560 SAT score. Again, like I said, anything above 1500, 1550 is a good spot to be in. He did not mention any school rank, and the board was CBSE from India. Now, this is another question that I get. A lot of students kind of get demotivated with the fact that they maybe studied in a state board or a CBSE board, and all of these things really don't put you in a back seat. What US colleges are actually looking for is the fact that you are able to excel academically in whatever curriculum you're studying. So don't let all of these small things hold you back from even applying or giving your best shot. So coming to the activities section, now there are 10 spots for activities. The student use all 10. And there are 5 spots for honors. The student use all 5. Again, I always suggest that you maximize the space that Common App is giving you to show off what your profile is all about. And if we just take a glance at all of these activities, we have some research-based activities under a professor. We have a founder of a podcast. We have co-founder of a school initiative, president of the theater club in school. Again, a newspaper-based foundation. You have Model UN, and you also have a little bit of sports as well as an internship. So you can see that a lot of these activities, they're not very internationally recognized or national level high profile. It just, based on the student's interest, this is what he decided to do. And it just shows that he was involved in a lot of different types of activities. Another mistake that I see students make is just because they want to study computer science or they want to study biology, they'll make sure that all of their activities focus only on that one thing. Now, you have to realize that as a high school student, colleges don't expect you to have everything figured out, and they don't want that all of your activities or honors have to be focused on the one concentration that you're applying for. So make sure that you have different areas of interest other than just the one that you're actually applying for as a major. Now, other than that, we have, 5 different honors. We have an essay competition. We have another NASA writing competition, multiple awards in math and science Olympiads. We have some more academic-based honors and an all-rounder excellence award. Now, one thing that I want to highlight is creative writing awards and Olympiads, which show academic rigor and, again, that academic integrity. Now, while extracurricular activities are all great and they carry a lot of value, at the end of the day, you are going to a college like Harvard to study. So any place that you can show that you're a good student, you can excel in academics, is always going to help you push your application and profile forward. Now with that, we come to the 2 deadlines that Harvard offers. Now it's important to remember here that you can only apply to Harvard in the fall intake. There is no spring intake for Harvard or in fact any of the Ivy Leagues. Now the 2 deadlines that we have are November 1st and January 1st. The November 1st is a restrictive early action deadline. Now specifically for Harvard, REA means that if they give you admission in REA, you have to say yes to them. It is a binding decision. The other deadline, which is the regular deadline, is January 1st, and this is again with all of the other applicants. Now coming to the writing requirements, there are a total of 5 essays that you're looking at for Harvard. The first one is a Common App essay, which you have to, submit for every college. This is not going to be a new one that you write, but other than the Common App essay, there are 4 supplemental essays that Harvard asks for. The first one is how will the life experiences that shape you help you contribute to Harvard? So basically, they're trying to ask you to pull from any one life experience that you've had. This can be academic or non-academic, and then talk about how you would use the skills from that life experience at Harvard University. The second one is describe an intellectual experience that's important to you. Again, it's important to note that this has to be intellectual, where you learned something. They want to know your ability of maybe critical thinking and your aptitude. Next up, we have describe any of your extracurricular activities. These can be more than one, and write a short paragraph about it. So this is a great place to expand on one that you've maybe already mentioned in your application, to write a little bit more to give Harvard more context. And lastly, how would you hope to use Harvard education in the future? What are your long-term career goals? Other than this, not particularly an essay, but basically top 3 things about your roommate that you might like them to know about you. So this is like a fun one that you can opt to write as well. The tuition fee for Harvard is somewhere around $55,000, and the total cost of attendance comes to $79,000, which is a huge amount. Approximately 65 lakh rupees per year is what you're looking for. But before you get scared of that number, I do want to say that there is some good news out there, because Harvard's average cost of attendance for each family is about $13,000 per year, which means that they are very, very generous when it comes to offering financial aid to all students, irrespective of whether you are international or not. Now, looking at the scholarships and financial aid, Harvard offers need-blind admissions, which is probably one of the best things that you would read on any college website. What this basically means is that when you apply to Harvard and say, yes, I need financial aid, they will not use that response to that question in deciding whether they give you admission or not. So they will treat you equally among all students. They basically just look at your profile, your academics, your activities, your essays, and how you are as a student to decide whether to give you admission or not, and not the fact that you can pay for your education or not. Now, with that said, let's say you get into Harvard, they will cover up to 100% of your demonstrated need, as long as you are filling out the CSS profile. Now remember that the CSS profile is a separate application that you have to fill out, but you can submit that along with your Harvard application. Now, if you guys want a complete and comprehensive walkthrough of how to apply to the CSS profile, the Common App, and everything you need to do in order to apply to Harvard and any other university in the US, the Ivy League 101 course is going to be a perfect fit. Now, for the Crazy Medusa fam, there's a 50% discount for undergrad as well as grad applications. So I'm going to leave a link to that in the description below. You guys can check it out. Now, with that, we move on to the graduate applications. Now, grad students will be applying through the website portal. There is no single portal like Common App, so you guys will be applying separately with an application fee of $105 and deadlines varying from December to March. Now, for grad students, there is a spring and fall intake. So depending on what major that you're applying for, you may have a different deadline, so just make sure you remember and keep track of what that is. Now, the typical requirements for graduate applications include the application itself, unofficial transcripts of your undergrad degree, 3 letters of recommendation, an academic statement of purpose and a personal statement of purpose, demonstrated English proficiency, writing samples, and GRE for some programs. The tuition fee for graduate students, you're looking at anywhere between $55,000 to $60,000 per year, which is again a big amount considering that you're coming in as an international student. So what kind of funding opportunities do we have? Now, for master's student, I would say that RA and TA positions would be your best bet, which is where you're working alongside a professor, either teaching a class or working on some research, and you get paid a monthly stipend. For PhD students, the good news is that it is completely funded. So the standard package that Harvard states for PhD students is that you guys get a grant towards your research and it'll take care of your tuition fee. So I think in my opinion, it's good enough for living expenses plus food. To an extent that your entire PhD would be fully funded and you wouldn't have to pay anything out of pocket. Alright guys, that's all that I had for this video, and hopefully you guys could take some inspiration from everything that I shared. You know, it is not impossible to get into a college like Harvard. Many students have done it, and the fact that you cannot afford this education should definitely not be the only factor that's holding you back. You know, make your profile stronger, make sure you're excelling in academics, and I'm sure that, you know, anyone who's watching this video has the capability to actually get admitted. Now, before we end this video, I want to ask our random question that we put at the end of every video, and for this one, it's going to be, what is your favorite Indian snack? Now mine, it's like no competition. I am a huge Pani Puri frantic. I love Pani Puri, whether it's like Indian street Pani Puri or overpriced Pani Puri that you get here in the US, which is like $10 or $15 a plate. I don't care, I'm gonna eat it. So I wanna know from you guys, what is your favorite Indian snack? Put it in the comments below. Like this video if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.